Jon, 16th World MMA Awards. How you feeling, man?
I feel old. I mean, I'm 46 years old. I feel like I've been here 10 times, and it's very exciting. Anik and Florian podcast was nominated, which is obviously very exciting for our little engine that could, our little show that's been going strong for about 10 years. And I'm presenting Fight of the Year tonight, which is very exciting. So I think a lot of us have some idea who we think might win that award, but we'll see what happens with the hardware here in a couple hours.
Talk about your podcast a little bit, right? Because I think you do so many things. You're one of the hardest working guys in the game. So to have this side project that you're so passionate about, what is it about that forum that you like the best?
Well, it's certainly a nice outlet to have after a big pay-per-view, if for nothing else, to just get some things off of my chest, right? I think I am, at my core, just a passionate MMA fan who likes to talk about it in a Monday morning quarterback type of way, but sometimes when you say a show is meat and potatoes, there could be a negative connotation to that, and our show is pretty meat and potatoes. For 10 years, people have known what they are going to get. It's MMA handicap, it's Ray Longo acting like a psychopath, and Kenny Florian as good an analytical mind as I think there is in MMA. So we've stuck to our recipe pretty well, and it's crazy to think when we started a podcast how many there were, and yet here we are coming up on our 10-year anniversary. So it's not something we chase for money. It's truly about the passion for mixed martial arts.
Did you ever think when you first started it back in 2015 was it, that you'd be up for awards 10 years later?
Honestly, the most humbling moment of my entire broadcasting career was last year when the Anik and Florian podcast was nominated for the first time, because we don't necessarily have the ratings of some of these other shows. We're not constantly trying to poach high-profile fighters to push our YouTube numbers necessarily. We're focused on our content. So to get acknowledged by these people for the content and the programming that we're pushing out alongside like Dana White's Contender Series and a lot of other shows that we respect, it's one of the greatest days of my life.
I don't know if you saw, there was an article, a story that was written today about Adrian Wojnarowski, about his travel schedule and how he kind of got burnt out. So I'm curious for you, like, how do you keep that engine going? Like, is it you have to like mentally exercise or?
So it's funny to be getting that question right now, because I just did my review for the UFC, my 13th year with the company, and this was the first time I actually acknowledged some burnout in my sort of written review of myself. So I don't know how many more years I have left at 100 nights a year on the road. It's been a lot of strain on the family, and I just don't know how many bullets there are in the chamber. You know, we call fights all over the world at a lot of different times of day, and it's an 8-hour broadcast, as you guys know, compared to a 3-hour American football game. So we'll see how many bullets are left in the chamber, but I can't envision 20 years of 100-plus nights on the road, even though if it were up to me, this is what I'd be doing until I die.
Is there something on the bucket list that you want to do before that day comes?
Certainly I have said publicly that if I go to my cremation chamber having never called an NFL football game, I will have felt a little bit shortchanged, but I have the job that I want, and it's my task to hold it down, and UFC 310 provides me another opportunity to not lose my fucking job, so that's kind of the way I approach it, you know.
You're presenting Fight of the Year, John, but Fighter of the Year, Alex Pereira versus Ilia Topuria. Who is it for you, man?
So it's interesting, when you look at Ilia Topuria taking out Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway successively in the manner in which he did, I can understand why he has a strong case. But Alex Pereira is my Fighter of the Year for 2024. This man didn't even compete until April, when he saved the day at UFC 300, saved the day again at UFC 303, and that says nothing of his epic fight against Khalil Roundtree Jr. at UFC 307. I understand it's a two-headed race. I understand these awards oftentimes go to champions who defend the belt at least once in a calendar year. It's Poetan's world right now. We're just living in it.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Really quickly, UFC 310, of course, in just a few days. What are you most looking forward to on this card?
So I'm very curious to see the extent to which Kai Asakura can challenge Alexandre Pantoja. But I've been saying for at least a year, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Machado Gary locked the door behind them in a true welterweight title eliminator. So, yeah, I mean, we got a lot of depth on the card, a lot of ranked fighters, but that's the one that jumps off the card for me.
Are people sleeping on this card? Because there's a lot of talk about it. It's not, you know, a typical year-end pay-per-view, yada, yada, yada. Yet, if you look at it, the prelims are stacked. It's a good card.
So for my Anik and Florian podcast handicappers, I had them break down 11 of the 14 fights on this card. So I don't know that there's any greater statement to the actual depth of UFC 310. And when you talk about former champions fighting on the preliminary portion and all the featherweight divisional movement that we could get, it's going to be a fantastic night.
What do you make? There's been a lot made of Aljamain Sterling versus Movsar Evloev on the prelims. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with Nate the Train opening up a pay-per-view, and I think it also has to do with the potential excitement level of a fight between Kron Gracie and Bryce Mitchell. But I do believe that Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling can exceed expectations. Yeah, it's a little weird to have an undefeated guy in the top 5 fighting a former champion on the prelim portion, but UFC leads the league in depth, right? I mean, I think if you look at this card, you kind of understand why they laid it out the way they did.
John, appreciate the time. Thank you. Awesome. Take care.